This is Fragmented Reality, a digital bulletin podcast designed to bust the buzzwords that dominate enterprise technology. My name is Ben Mouncer, and in this episode I take my clutch of eggs, each containing an industry buzzword, to Craig Palmer, who leads Verizon's customer experience business in Europe. Craig, did you expect to be opening 6 eggs when you came to the office?
I'm not sure I did expect to be opening 6 eggs. I expect to have a nice little conversation, not facing a new breakfast.
We've got 6 eggs, and within those 6 eggs are 6 enterprise technology buzzwords. Now, Craig works in the field of customer experience for Verizon, so there are a few there which are specific to his particular field. But there are also a couple more in there which our listeners will certainly be familiar with. So, Craig, put your hand into the bowl of eggs and pull out the first buzzword.
I'll have a go. So, multicoloured eggs. I'll go for the blue one because that's my football team.
Craig's gone for a blue egg first.
The future of work.
The future of work. Now, I think the first obvious question there is what comes to your mind when you sort of see the phrase or hear the phrase future of work? So it's bandied about quite a lot, isn't it? What comes to your mind?
So you're right. It is bandied about quite a lot, and I think as you enter different organisations, the future of work means different things. I think the biggest thing that we've got to do is in large corporates is pay attention to the new working generations coming through, because they're actually defining the future of work. So there's that inertia between where we are today with large corporates changing and actually what the new workforce and actually new way of working means for the next generation coming through. So in the field I'm in with customer service and technology, it's about how can we enable those people to have the experience they want as they come into the workforce. So I think it's less about bricks and mortar. It's more about mobility. It's more about flexible working. I sort of look at my son and his girlfriend and how they want to work. And I think that's the lead we need to take, because actually they've got a much more balanced life, a more balanced life, which is better for your working environment as well. Because it's not as when I came into the workplace that you had a career, you worked, and the 60, 70 hours a week to get yourself in the workplace, and then you connected your outside life around that. I think it's more holistic now how the next generation is coming through, and we need to take note of that.
Where do you think we are on that journey? Do you think we're at sort of a crossover between generations at the moment? Because obviously you still have people who are used to the traditional methods of working and a more structured working day and working week, and you have the incoming generation, the millennials or the younger people who are coming in expecting something different. Does that present a challenge to corporations, do you think? I can talk from where we are as Verizon, and I think we're definitely embracing that challenge with our L&D people last week, and talking about actually the new working people coming into the organisation actually need some coaching as well, because some of the ways that they expect to work are actually you do need some sort of corporate responsibility around how you interact with people. So I think we are at a crossover, but what I see across everybody I work with is that openness to actually make it successful and bring it in. So yeah, undoubtedly be one of those things that evolves, and when we think we're there, it will change again. What's your personal preference? How do you work?
So I'm quite flexible with work. So I think most people in the technology industry are. So I'll work as I need to work to get the job done. The conversation we had before we started the podcast. I live in Sheffield. I work in London 3 days a week. I work in Sheffield where I need to be. So I think that flexibility is more and more.
Obviously, for a company to make that kind of change, it can be quite a big thing. Apart from being just something that the next generation of employees want, what are the actual benefits, do you think, of that sort of future work environment where you're working remotely, you're working on the move, and you're working the hours that you want to work? Obviously, that sounds a great thing, and it is putting sort of the power in the hands of the employees, but what are the actual benefits from a business perspective?
I think there's two things. I think you say putting the power in the hands of the employees to make that choice is a great thing. But actually you need support in that structure as well, So you've got to put some framework in place that they've got the support to get the access to people they need when things arise that shouldn't arise. I think definitely for an employer, that flexibility is what our customers are looking for as well. So, when we're servicing customers, we need to have that flexibility around the workforce to be able to react to what they want. We work across international time zones. And I think it's been reasonable on both sides. I think it's been reasonable with your employees as well as being reasonable with the customers as well.
Excellent. Before we crack open the next egg, obviously when it comes to the future of work, there's another buzzword or thing on the horizon, artificial intelligence. What role do you think it will play going forward? Are you in the camp where you think AI will augment the workforce and empower the workforce, or do you believe it will result in a huge loss of jobs and a complete sort of transformation of the workforce?
So, again, AI is a buzzword that is absolutely out there, and when you sort of look at it from a 50,000 foot view, the benefits for the employees, the benefits for customers are immense. I think we're at that starting point of actually realising the benefits of AI, and what it will deliver. It's almost like, you look at that, there's Where Wally posters. You look at that and you're looking for where AI is in the mass of what we're doing with customers. I think if you can pick it out, there are absolutely benefits.
Excellent. That is a topic we could talk about all day, but we're going to have to move on. That's the future of work done. Shall we crack open another?
We go for a green egg, shall we?
Yeah, they're a bit too big for hens' eggs, aren't they? They're more...
Are they duck eggs?
Yeah, about the size of a duck's egg. I say, what's next from the bowl of buzzwords?
Customer centricity.
So customer centricity. Now, obviously, this is something particularly close to your to your field of work. We hear businesses talk a lot about how then they're completely pivoted towards putting the customer at the centre of what they do rather than the business or anything else like that. So when you hear big corporations or smaller businesses saying that, do you believe that they actually have the means to be able to do that? Because obviously that's a big commitment, isn't it, to completely shift and make the customer the centre of everything. And obviously this is the buzzword. Customer centricity is the word that you hear a lot around this.
So I think organisations do, and I think you see, we've sort of touched on a couple of the areas that are important to this. So actually, start with the customer, start with the employee, and actually put the enabling technology, and then you've got all the other things that we know, processes and change. Verizon itself is going through a change at the moment, Verizon 2.0, which is all about that. It's all about pivoting the organisation, making the organisation absolutely customer-centric. So, where we are customer-centric today, and making that even more embedded in the organisation and what we're doing. And that comes with a change programme that I've not sort of experienced before in my working life, in terms of the way that they are, I was going to say re-educating, but bringing people on the journey, with the training we've got, how to think about employees, how to think about customers. And I think that's the important thing. The cultural change is the most important change to achieve customer centricity. I think it falls down when we start doing things like, the buzzwords. So when you are driven by vendors, or actually, a vendor wants to sell something, and you've been driven by the vendor's buzzword to adopt something. It was IVR, then it was automation, and now it's chatbots, it's AI. Actually, you've got to boil that back to, what does that really mean? What does it really mean for a customer? What does it really mean for the organisation?
I think, obviously, the idea of the customer being very important, though, surely that for businesses that should have always been the case. Where do you think we've come from to this point, where actually they're sort of waking up and realising that customers are really important? Why do you think this is only sort of happening now? So
I think I don't think it's a wake up. I think you're right. I think organisations have always understood that the customer is important and should be the most important thing. I think the reality now is that our customers have got more choice, and differentiation is more about customer service than ever before. I remember having a conversation with head of customer service at a large bank, probably 5 years ago. And he said at the time, we get 18 months differentiation on a product. The reality of product differentiation now is probably months, weeks. It's got to be about the service. And I think that's where we've got to drive. And it's right, for you and I as consumers, it's right for our customers that, having the right level of service and being able to be serviced how we want, when we want, is the right way to go. So I think it's about the pace of change that's driving it. I think it's about the expectations of customers of all demographics now in what they want. So I think it's that pivot away from product to service.
You said it takes a lot of work for companies internally to make this shift. Can you give us a bit more sort of detail on that and the sort of scale of change that has to take place within the organisation to make this change happen?
I think that comes. It's different organisations as to where the scale of that change is. You've certainly got new entrants where they are building systems that can deal with that. I think a lot of the established business is what we talked about earlier in this discussion, that you've got a legacy. How do you move the legacy? And it's the pace of change of the legacy that is important and what drives the change. And I think that's where that's where you've got to focus. You've got to work with people that can take the legacy and transform the legacy into the new world.
Customer centricity, this drive, it's not going away, is it? It's almost like an industry in itself now. There's technology out there that can help you with all this kind of stuff. Do you sort of see that growing, and this isn't a buzzword that is going to go away anytime soon, is it?
No, I do think it's more than a buzzword. I think it is definitely a fundamental theme of where we will be for forever now. Putting the customer at the centre of what we do, and it should be. And I think we've always aspired to that, and we've always done it. I think it's just the measurement has moved on. The measurement in where your customer centricity needs to be has moved on. So you need to react to that. And with the advent of more data being available around where your customers are, ever more connected devices, the security fears, you've got to bring all that together and put that at the heart of actually delivering more and more for your customers.
4 eggs left to crack. So Craig, do you want to dip your hand back into the bowl and pull out the next one? Let's see.
We'll go for the
see what treats.
I'll go for the spread of colours. I'll get the yellow one now. So one of each. So omnichannel.
Omnichannel. Okay. So again, this is relevant in your field work. How would you define what omnichannel is?
So it's actually interesting because I think the definition of omnichannel has shifted. If you go back, so definition today is how you can interact with an organisation using the channel you want, so any channel. I think what is interesting about that is if you go back even 2 years, 3 years, that was about traditional channels. It was, does somebody want to phone in? Do they go in by email? And that was pretty much your limited choice. I think what we're seeing now is actually organisations and individuals embracing every channel. So the channel becomes ubiquitous, so WhatsApp, WeChat, Facebook Messenger, and I think that's what customers are wanting, and actually organisations are now stepping up to deliver. So how do you bring any contact from any individual into the organisation and deal with it? And that's certainly been at the sort of centre of what we've been doing with customers now for a good sort of 18 months, and it's not an insignificant change. You've got different technologies, you've got different processes, you've got different security fears around different channels, and you've got to bring them together and actually make that work. And it does effectively play into the other stuff that are top of people's agenda. So how do you move to cloud to enable that? Because you can't do it with legacy technology. You need new technology, and a lot of the vendors that we're working with have been very good in sort of embracing that. So we get that enablement. We get that enablement that customers can interact via the channel they want, and how they want to interact with organisations.
Would you say omnichannel has had its day? Because the only reason I say that, and I'm sort of following on from what you've said there. We at Digital Bulletin recently spoke to another company about this, and they work in this, and they sort of defined it as channel-less rather than omni-channel. And do you feel that's a sort of good definition?
That's not a bad definition, actually. Yeah. I think what you've got to be careful of, I think, when you sort of change the definition is, people do recognise omni-channel, and they've got sort of a leading star they're heading towards. If you change the definition again, I guess you've got a danger that people will go off that. So I think we know where we're heading with omnichannel.
Is omnichannel still a word used, in the conversations that you have?
Yes, it certainly is. I think, certainly customers and certainly the vendors we work for as well recognise omnichannel as, it's almost like it is that leading star. How do we standardise transactions?
Have you got any insights into what Verizon is doing in this area?
In terms of, we've got two. There's two things we are doing. Well, there's two areas we're focusing on. So we have a massive wireless business in the US mainly, with enormous contact centres, and I see the stats that sort of come out of that. We're absolutely embracing this, to drive. Our customers are choosing to use different channels to interact with us, which is, fundamentally about different channel choice, using the channel they want. So we see all that sort of happening, and then we are working with customers. So we're working with a lot of customers, a lot of projects we do now is less about voice. So it's, how do I deal with voice in my contact centre, but actually how do I turn voice into a value channel rather than a service channel, and then how do I bring new channels in?
Okay. So to finish that point, omnichannel, in your view, it's changing, it's evolving, but it's here to stay, and that's a trend that will carry on. Okay, so we've got we're halfway through. 3 eggs to go: yellow, blue, and green. Craig's gone for the blue.
Go for the blue one again. Digital disruption.
Digital disruption, one of my favourites, this one. I've never understood how the word disruption has come to mean, because disruption is a negative thing, really. But obviously, in the technology industry, we've come to know it as something which is positive. So I guess, what's your view on that sort of thing, first of all? Like digital disruption, how would you define that?
I think there's probably 2 areas we've not talked about which play into the whole of this. So digital disruption. What it means for our customers and how we service our customers, and then the area in businesses that's been affected by this. So in terms of sort of customers, I think it's the ubiquitous of data, the access to phones, the way they want to sort of drive transactions. So it's that move away from the traditional web interaction through voice to the move to interacting with organisations through a digital channel. So I think that's driving organisations to act. And it touches on what we talked about, how do you then implement it on omnichannel? How do you build your organisation to sort of scale around that? I think for organisations, the bit that's sort of invisible to customers at the moment is the way connected devices are going to play to this. So I think that level of sort of digital disruption is changing. Certainly in the customer service world, how organisations will have to consume more data, secure more data, and then use that to drive a better customer transaction.
What do you think of the word disruption? And do you think it's a bit?
Well, I think anything like this is good because it gets people thinking and talking. Okay. And I think and that's not a bad place. No, you've got to evolve to change. So having that sort of challenge is not a bad thing because it allows the organisation to actually give some focus to something.
Throwing it forward, do you think there's a window for digital disruption which will sort of end at some point and will sort of level out and there'll be a digital environment that everyone's happy with, or do you think it's just going to rumble on and there'll be continual disruption? Yeah,
I think it's almost become like the power providers. When electricity came along, how many generations ago, the head of electricity had a seat on the board and it was seen as this new thing that we're going to drive the business. I think we're there with technology now, but actually technology will just keep on changing and evolving. So I think this disruption will continue, and it's the right thing. It should continue because we're at the infancy of AI. We're at the infancy of sort of the migration to a lot of sort of cloud applications. So it's going to continue for a long time to come.
Excellent. Okay, let's move on to one of the last 2. I've gone green.
Digital transformation.
Okay, so obviously very similar to the one we've just discussed. How would you differentiate digital transformation from digital disruption? Because transformation is something we probably hear companies talk more about in official statements about the work they're doing rather than disruption. So Is that the kind of difference that you would say it has as well?
I think it is. I think you're right there. I think it's a corporate buzzword. So it's a buzzword that's built around actually changing the organisation. I will loop back to actually the right sort of organisations is changing because what they're doing with customers and what they're doing with employees. And I think a lot of the drive for digital transformation is around new technology to simplify as well. So the simplification is probably the third strand. In terms of, you implement digital transformation to simplify the organisation to allow you to better transact with your customers and empower your employees, is where I see it.
Do you think, as a corporate buzzword, it is overused? And do you think, obviously, some companies might say we are undergoing a digital transformation without actually there being a sort of coherent strategy around that? They've sort of said it and they believe that's what they're doing. But I guess it can't be defined, though, can it? Really, because for different companies, different sizes, different sectors, it's a very different thing.
I think that's right. I think it all comes from where you're starting from and where you're going to get to as to the level of your transformation as an organisation. So I think it is used. I think it's used as the right sort of anchor to actually change a business, because it's recognised. It's recognised by employees that actually we are moving and involving the organisation.
Do you think there is any type of transformation now that isn't a digital transformation?
I think that's a leading question, because no, I don't. I think it's all. I mean, it's got to be, hasn't it? You know, it is the absolute pillar of organisation, of everything we do, isn't it? Digital is the actual pillar of what we do nowadays.
I guess that lends to the point where you see sort of IT and technology coming from very much a backseat to the forefront of organisations, at the centre of the C-suite. CTOs, CIOs are having more and more say. That's a trend that you've experienced as part of your jobs and your conversations with other peers, as it were. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think when you have conversations at the C-suite, the adoption of digital, the adoption of new technologies is definitely at the forefront of where they're driving change within organisations. But having said that, the people change and the cultural change, I think, is well recognised now. So I don't think it's now a case of we're going to implement a new system and forget the employees, because everybody realises and understands now that you never get the adoption that you want with that, and you never get the change you want with that. So I think, mature organisations, and it comes back to our Verizon 2.0 programme that we're running. That's all about bringing people with you, making people right for the next generation of the workplace. So I think that cultural change and the change in the workplace is what's making digital change possible.
Fantastic. One egg left. So it's not double yolk. Do you want two buzzwords? Let's hope DevOps haven't sneaked in there. Chatbots. As a consumer, do you like using chatbots?
So actually I do. I think and certainly the field that we're in the CX business in Verizon, we see chatbots going in more and more. But we're at the infancy of it. We're starting to learn it, and I think the strategy for implementing chatbots is
that a new buzzword?
Yeah, we'll make that one up. Yeah, that'll be the next podcast. I think the way you implement a chatbot is what makes it successful or not. Not just in the technology that's supported, but actually how you present that to your customers. So if your customers understand that they are interacting with a chatbot, you will get a better experience. When you try and hide it that it's it's Craig that's interacting you on some sort of chat, it will fall down.
Because why do you think companies do that then? What's their thinking when they personalise the chatbot?
I think for that they're trying to sort of hide the transaction. I think and I think it's your entry point into why you were implementing chatbots. If it's purely about call deflection, we want to do as much of this, automate as much of this as possible. It tends to be that sort of that approach. If you approach this from it's a tool within our customer service strategy, we'll not hide that this is a chatbot, but part of the reason for having chatbots is that the learning that comes out of that, and it goes on to the topic of AI and how you pull the information and transactions out of chatbots to learn so that they can be better. So for me, it's about being open up front around what you're doing and blend it in your strategy.
Do you find that a lot of companies are adopting that kind of mindset, or do you think they're still stuck in the we want to hide the fact that this is an automated response and not an actual human being? Do you think a lot of companies are still doing that?
I've not done the survey, so I don't know. But I think there's definitely, from my personal experience, there's definitely a balance, and there's definitely organisations that are trying to hide them. And then there's certainly ones that you can see are up front. So I think it's still a blend.
You said the technology itself is still in its infancy. How far and how big do you think that technology can grow, and how humanised can even though we're being clear that it's a chatbot, as you said, how humanised can the responses become, do you think? And do you think you can we're going to get to a stage in the future where it feels like a human-to-human interaction completely?
It feels like, and it's not, I'm not an AI expert, it feels like that there are immense possibilities out there. How far it's going to go, it will go, I guess, as far as the technology will let it over time, but are we ever going to get to the point where it's a human-to-human transaction? I think we probably will do in sort of X number of years.
And you said you're certainly interested in it at Verizon. When you take the customer experience thing as a whole, where do chatbots fit into that, and how much of a priority are they?
For our contact centres, so we do use chatbots. We use AI. We've been quite open around how we do that with the wireless business in the States, and it's all part of that blended strategy. So we've been quite prescriptive that this is part of the experience that we want to give to our customers, with the mindset it was implemented to enhance the customer experience rather than anything else. I think if you go into it with that mindset, you're going to have success. And there's always opt-out channels. You can always get to a live support within it. And I think the customers that we're working with in Europe, when we're sort of pitching these ideas to them, recognise that as well now. I think there was an early perception that chatbots meant cost out, whereas now I think people are absolutely there that chatbots are about enhancing the customer service.
What about for the call centre agents themselves? Maybe one's listening to this and thinking, chatbots are going to take over my industry and leave me without a job. What do you say to that? Do human agents still have an important role to play, is the question, I guess?
They absolutely do, and I think if the trends continue in terms of just on pure call volumes, call volumes when you implement an automation strategy like this don't actually disappear anytime soon. They just allow agents to have a better interaction with customers. And what we are also seeing with some of the partners we work with, that actually when you implement a chatbot, the learning out of the chatbot and the information to the agent actually enhances the agent's experience. They're dealing with better quality transactions. You can see where the customer's been and gone.
Excellent. Craig, I think we're done. All the eggs have been cracked open. We've successfully consumed the products, and we've actually cut through some of the buzzwords, especially in your industry. So thank you very much for the conversation today.
Pleasure. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Power up your day with the Bulletin Brief, the latest news, insights and opinion delivered straight to your inbox. Subscribe now at digitalbullet.in.